Hello, my true crime junkies. Today, we're going in on a guy by the name of Jamelske, aka the Dungeon Master. No, he's not a badass Dungeons and Dragons player, he's just bad. He's most known for his serial kidnapping and raping, as well as a soundproof bunker that was built under his home that was used as a prison for multiple women over the years. I know what you're thinking. What the fuck? So am I. I grew up right down the street from him and had no idea this was happening. So without further ado, let's jump in. Jamelske was born in Fayetteville, New York, a suburb of Syracuse in 1935. In high school, his peers described him as extremely quiet and withdrawn, rarely ever speaking a word to anyone. Ding, 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 socially inept loner, red flag. After graduating from Morrisville State College, he held a few blue-collar jobs, married a school teacher named Dorothy, and had 3 sons, one of which died in infancy. The whole family knew the bunker existed, but were unaware that it was being used as a dungeon. Right off the bat, the petty part of me thinks, how did you not go down there and see women chained up and tortured? Well, I'll tell ya. His wife became ill in 1988, the same year that he committed his first kidnapping, and she died the following year. In all accounts that I've read, his children were out of the picture / not living at home. I assume estranged, but can't confirm. Around the same time, Jamelske came into great fortune from a combination of a sizable inheritance from his parents, as well as property investments in California and Nevada. By 2000, he was a millionaire, despite all that cashish. He lived very frugally and was often seen collecting beer cans and bottles from trash cans for deposit. Now that little factoid might seem random, but I'm asking you to trust me and remember it for later, as his obsession with penny pinching is ultimately his undoing, or as I like to say, a swift kick of justice in the ass. Mic drop. Now, you might be wondering, how did he find and entrap his victims? Well, that's where the story gets interesting. He would drive around the inner city and look for women who he thought wouldn't be missed. Anger rising? What flawed logic? There were 5 victims in total, and their ages spanned from 14 to 53 years old, and they were all of different ethnicities. This made it particularly difficult for police to identify a pattern and subsequently identify a suspect. Jamelske would pull his victims into his car and drive them around town for hours so that they had no clue where they were, so that, if they escaped or when they were freed, they couldn't tell police a thing. Upon arriving to his home, he forced his victims into the dungeon, stripped, bound, and held them captive one at a time. He was very good at playing mind games to keep the upper hand by maintaining his victims in a state of fear, by telling them lies such as he was a part of the police department and higher-ups were making him do it, or that he was part of an underground sex slavery network, and I assume if they didn't behave, they'd be sold somewhere else far from home and treated much worse. He forced his victims to keep a diary, marking the days where they were bathed with a B, brushed their teeth with a T, or raped with an S for sex. Excuse me, I'm gonna throw up real quick. After several months of captivity, Jamelske would drive his victims to a location of their choice, blindfolded, and simply let them go. To avoid leaving any evidence, he would avoid sexual contact with his victims days before their release. Yikes. Now, let's talk about that famous bunker. Hidden behind a storage shelf in the basement was a steel door. That door led to an 8-foot-long tunnel, which had to be traversed on hands and knees to another steel door, which finally led to a 24 by 12 by 8-foot room. Reading those measurements made me feel extremely claustrophobic. Chest is tight, I'm a little uncomfortable, could not imagine being trapped there for days, weeks, years. In terms of how the dungeon was set up, there was a nasty stained bathtub in the center on a raised wooden deck. Victims were forced to bathe in this with a garden hose. Not only is that extremely violating and demeaning, that water was ice cold. There was no plumbing in the bunker, so when the bathtub drained out of a hole on the bottom, the water splashed all over the cement floor where it remained until it evaporated, making the room damp and moldy. Could you imagine that smell? There was an aluminum frame chair with no seat positioned over a pail as a makeshift toilet. Other items in the room include a clock radio, filthy mini fridge, yellow extension cord, and an aluminum hose to pump warm air into the bunker from the furnace. The bunker also had many things written on the walls, most notably, Wall of Thugs. Now, we'll get to why that piece of art is so important in a minute, so just tuck that away for a second. In addition to the bunker, Jamelske also built a tall wooden fence to fortify his property as it transitioned from empty fields to million-dollar developments. That might be a little dramatic, but the houses around where his house once stood are very nice. This way, no one could see out, and more importantly, no one could see in. Only in the suburbs would people see their crazy neighbor erecting a giant palisade and think, phew, thank God. Now he's not my problem. If I can't see him, he can't see me. Whew, that's great. I could build a moat and simply just sprinkle in a few alligators and no one would blink an eye. Okay, maybe that's dramatic, but still, you get my point. There were many moments in this case where cops had an oh shit moment from lazy prior police work. For example, police accused Jamelske's third victim of making her abduction up. So proud of my hometown. In 2001, Jamelske abducted his fourth victim, a 26-year-old mother who was taken outside of her workplace. She was released after 2 months, and she later shared her experience on Larry King under the pseudonym Jennifer. During that interview, she shared 3 notable words that were painted on the wall, and those words are Wall of Thugs. I told you I'd get back to that. So when cops later raided the bunker, like Desert Storm, they saw those words and were like, oh shit. They just froze. Like previous victims, Jennifer reported her abduction and told police that her abductor's car was a tan 1975 Mercury Comet. Now that's very specific. I'm very proud of her because when my Uber pulls up, I'm like, I have no idea what this car looks like. Make, model, nothing. I just know the color. They searched for this car and found one, but the owner was not responsible. In actuality, Jennifer got the make and color correct, but the year was 1974, allowing Jamelske to worm his way out of justice once again. So at this point in the story, we need some good news. So let's fast forward to how he got caught. It all started with his final victim, a 16-year-old named Micah, who was abducted in October of 2002. She managed to befriend Jamelske. Investigators later described this friendship as Stockholm Syndrome, which, for those of you who are newer to true crime, that syndrome describes feelings of trust or affection from a hostage to a captor. This is a true survival mechanism. Jamelske apparently took a special liking to Micah and even allowed her upstairs into his home. About a year into her confinement, Jamelske felt comfortable to take her out. They went bowling, visited a karaoke bar, and finally a bottle redemption center. Let me say that again. A bottle redemption center. Remember at the beginning of this video when I told you penny pinching ultimately did him in? That his mighty downfall was depositing beer bottles and cans? That's right. My girl Micah managed to convince him to use a phone to call a church and ask for times of service. In reality, when he left her alone, she actually called her sister. Within minutes, police arrived and arrested Jamelske. Police searched his property for bodies, but surprisingly none were found. During the trial, it was found out that Jamelske thought he wouldn't be seriously punished for his crimes, thinking at best it would be chalked up to unlawful imprisonment, and that he would do community service or brief jail time as a result. Spell it out with me, y'all. D-E-L-U-S-I-O-N-A-L. Delusional. Hope I spelled that right. I think I did. He ultimately made a plea bargain and pled guilty to 5 counts of kidnapping. As part of it, his possessions were sold off and his money was divided between the victims, which is hilarious because that's the ultimate fuck you to someone that only cares about the mighty dollar instead of human life. Love it. He was sentenced to 18 years to life, but he won't be eligible for parole until 2021. But y'all, it's 2020, and with the rate that January has flown by, 2021 is right around the corner. He'd be 86, but that still makes me so uncomfortable. Anywho, that's your true crime fix for this lovely Murder Monday. Stay tuned for our next videos coming out on Thursday and Saturday. Peace, love, and light.